There are 4 active cases of coronavirus in Victoria, with no new cases reported overnight. There are 2 Victorians who are in hospital. Either of those 2 are receiving intensive care. A total of 3,299,302 test results have been received since the beginning of the pandemic. That's 16,865 additional test results since yesterday. Can I thank each and every one of those almost 17,000 Victorians who went and got tested. It is the most important thing that you can do. Following the rules, of course, is very important too, but the moment you have symptoms, the moment you register those symptoms, please go and get tested. Don't delay an hour, don't delay a day, because while you're waiting, you can potentially be very infectious and be inadvertently infecting other people who in turn go on to infect others still. That is how we keep a lid on this. People getting tested really quickly as soon as you have any sense that you've got even the mildest of symptoms. Again, can I thank those nearly 17,000 Victorians who went and did just that. It's a very impressive thing. Those test results, the number of tests across the last couple of weeks, are the highest anywhere in our nation, and as a percentage of the overall community, and certainly the amount of positives coming back per test, per 1,000 tests, is well and truly above any of the internationally accepted guidelines. We've got to keep it that way. You've got to keep getting tested if you've got any symptoms at all, and you have to do it quickly. The rolling averages to the 7th of November are 0.4 cases in Metro Melbourne, 0 in regional Victoria. There are 2 mystery cases for the period 23 October to 5 November, and again, there are no cases in regional Victoria. I now want to move to a number of announcements around restrictions, but just before I do that, can I say how impressive it is that Victorians have built something that is not only unique in our country, but it is of international significance. To have gone from more than 700 cases a day to now 9 days of 0 cases in a row is a particularly impressive thing, and it's something that every single Victorian should be proud of. We've all done this by playing our part, and we'll only maintain these low numbers, not necessarily 0, but numbers that are low and manageable, if we continue to play our part. And that's on all of us, whether it's wearing a mask, washing our hands, coughing into the crook of our arm, following the rules, as difficult and frustrating as that can be. That's what's got us open. These rules are all about staying safe and staying open. We've all got a part to play in that, and I'm deeply impressed and very, very grateful to every single Victorian who these last 2 weeks has done an amazing job, and 4 months have done an amazing job. What that means is I can confirm that all of those arrangements that we announced 2 weeks ago, we'll be able to take those steps today, and further to that, I'm also about to take you through what the rules will be and the further step, the next step, if you like, that we take on the 22nd of November. So I'll just run through this. You've all got documentation. We'll answer any questions you've got, but if there's any issues, then we'll take the time to make sure the wording is absolutely right. But just in terms of top line, first of all, from 11:59 p.m. tonight, Victoria will be once again united as one single state. The 25-kilometre travel limit will go. The Melbourne regional Victoria border comes down. Families will be able to be together again. We know that so many people have missed those that they love the most, those who they need to see and have been desperately keen to see for such a long period of time. Both the 25-kilometre limit goes, and also that ring of steel, the Metropolitan Melbourne regional Victoria border, comes down tonight as well. That'll mean we can restart regional tourism. There'll be an ad campaign that's launched from tonight and tomorrow around particularly Gippsland and the high country, noting, of course, the very significant bushfire activity that they experienced during the summer. That'll be all about encouraging people to go and have a hard-earned and very well-earned break in those communities, and indeed in other regional communities. Overnight accommodation will reopen. There'll be limits on who can share those facilities, and we've got some details for you. It's essentially one single household plus potentially a small number, 2 other adults from other households and their children, but essentially it's your household and a limited number of others. This is in line with home visits, where 2 adults from different households plus their dependents can visit as well. In terms of major changes, so they are the things that are going. In terms of other major changes, hospitality venues will increase to 40 people inside and 70 people outside. Faith gatherings will increase to 50 people outdoors and 20 people inside. Funerals up to 20 people indoors and 50 outdoors. Care facility visits, 1 household per day for 2 hours. Those visits will be allowed. They've been it's been very challenging, I know, for people not to be able to visit those in a health service or in an aged care facility, but there will be the possibility for 1 household to visit per day for 2 hours. Time limits on partners visiting maternity wards also go, but I do want to stress that individual hospitals and caregiving facilities may have their own rules in place based on the vulnerability and the circumstances of patients and residents and clients. These are the broad rules, but they always have to be subject to whatever conditions that an individual hospital might put on or a part of a hospital. For instance, a ICU may continue to have limits and rules, and that's about the safety of everybody, many of whom can be particularly vulnerable. Workforce caps on meat, poultry and seafood industries go as well. Now, things that will be open subject to all sorts of different conditions, the detail of which will be provided to industry, will be up on the website and be available to the general community. But in broad terms, gyms and physical recreation, 20 people per venue, 10 people per space. Indoor non-contact sport for under 18-year-olds with a limit of 20 people. Indoor pools, again, 20 people. Indoor skate parks, indoor trampoline centres, libraries, toy libraries, community venues, play centres, galleries, cinemas, museums, all 20 people per venue or 20 people per space, depending on the sector. Gaming machines, 10 people per venue. The casino will be able to have 10 people per room with a maximum of 10 separate rooms being used. This is for electronic gaming machines and gaming tables. That is a very modest start to what is the biggest single site employer in the state, but it's important that we get that balance right in terms of safety. Now, things that do not change. If you can work from home, you must work from home. That remains in place, and the time will come when we can change that, but that is not now, and I can't usefully speculate when that will be. In terms of masks, all the mask rules remain in place. Again, a time will come when maybe we can have some changes to that. That is not for today, and I'm not going to speculate when that will be. Masks are, I know, it's not a pleasant experience, particularly as the weather gets warmer, but very low cost, very high benefit, and it's an insurance policy, if you like. It's that extra bit of insurance to make sure that we're doing everything we can to stop someone who's got it inadvertently giving it to others. Public gatherings, the 10-person limit remains in place, and weddings, I'm sad to say, but the 10-person limit for indoor or outdoor weddings remains in place. That does not include the couple, the celebrant or a photographer. Just before I move to what we hope to be able to announce at midnight on the 22nd of November, I just wanted to speak to the state of disaster and the state of emergency. The state of disaster will not be renewed because whilst the virus is still with us, we're in a place where we don't need to have that legislative instrument in place any longer, and that's very good news. It's a clear sign that things have turned and that we are moving steadily and very significantly towards that COVID normal. The state of emergency, however, will be extended until the 6th of December to allow the Chief Health Officer's directions to remain in place. So that is essentially everything that is occurring from midnight tonight. From midnight the 22nd of November, so effective from the 23rd, there are a number of other major changes. Private gatherings will be 10 visitors to your home. Public gatherings, 50 people will be the limit. Hospitality venues, the indoor cap will go to 100 with a density of 1 to 4 square metres, and the outdoor cap will go to 200 with a density requirement of 1 person per 2 square metres. So that will mean our hospitality venues in 2 weeks' time, they take a step today, they take an even bigger step in a couple of weeks' time, and that's very important for jobs, very important for those businesses, but it has to be done in a safe way. It can't be done open slather, because whilst these numbers are good, what we've all built together is fragile. precious and fragile, and it has to be safeguarded. And that's exactly what all of these decisions do. In terms of sport, physical recreation, gyms would go to 100 people in groups of 20. Indoor sport, again, 100 people in groups of 20. Large sporting venues, 25% of their overall capacity. Outdoor physical recreation, 500 people, groups of 50. Indoor pools, 50 people. Outdoor pools, no cap, but there'll be a density of 1 person per 4 square metres. Indoor skate parks, trampoline centres, play centres, again, 50 people and groups of 20 for each of those 2 settings. In terms of the accommodation sector, a cap of 10 people from any number of families will apply to those hotel, motel places where you might go and stay. In terms of faith, indoors 100 people, and they'll again be grouped in 20s. Outdoors 500 people, grouped in 50s. Weddings will go to 100 people, but it is only still 10 people in a private residence if the wedding is held at a private home. Funerals, 100 people, again 10 people if that service was held privately. Cinemas and theatres will go to 100 people grouped in 20s with a density of 1 person per 4 square metres. The same applies libraries, toy libraries, community venues. They'll go to 100 people and again be grouped in groups of 20 people. Gaming machines, 100 people, density of 1 person per 4 square metres. The casino, there's no patron cap been determined yet, but there will be a density of 1 person per 4 square metres. Care facilities, visits, would be made up of 5 people from 2 households. There'd be no time limits. Children would be allowed, and of course excursions would also be allowed where people were leaving that care facility. Hair and beauty, and I know this has been an issue that's been raised with us from many in this industry. Masks can be removed for facials, beard trimmings, piercings, those sorts of things where it is simply not practical to be able to offer those services if the client is wearing a mask. The person providing that service would have to, they would still wear their mask, but the client would be able to have a much broader range of services because masks would no longer be required by them to be worn. That's a key barrier to getting those services. Real estate, indoors 20 people with a density of 1 person per 4 square metres. Outdoors, so auctions, 50 people. That is essentially the list of things that will come into effect tonight and the list of things that we are very confident we'll be able to deliver in 2 weeks' time. A couple of points before I throw to the Minister, who's going to speak about enforcement, health workers, and then we'll go to questions, and Brett's here as well. We can all take questions. I just want to make a couple of key points. 2 weeks ago we announced changes. They came into effect on the couple of days later. We then foreshadowed that today we'd be able to take these steps. We have done that. Everything that we said we would do, and indeed a little bit beyond that, the rules now apply the same in regional Victoria as they do in metropolitan Melbourne. We are very confident that in 2 weeks' time, so from the morning of the 23rd, that Monday, we'll be able to take all those steps that I have outlined then. So, for instance, having 10 people to your home from as many households as you like. Those sorts of things. We are confident that we'll be able to do that. But we'll only be able to make those changes, take those steps, which is the last step before we reach that COVID normal, which we will lock in well ahead of Christmas with the aim of having that COVID normal Christmas and maintaining those settings, at least those settings, and maybe even going further again throughout 2021. We'll only get to that point if each of us fundamentally acknowledge this point. 9 days of zero is not the same as a vaccine. Each of us have played a part in building this precious thing, and each of us have to play a part in protecting it. If we want to stay open, then we have to stay safe. If we want to enjoy these steps and more, then we all have to play our part. And it is getting tested when you feel sick. It is taking these rules seriously. They're not rules that are against you. They are rules for you, your safety, your job, your community, your family, your state. That's what it's all about. It is a point of pride, I think, for every single Victorian to have gone from 725 cases to now down to more than a week of 0 cases. That's deeply impressive, but there is a fragility to this thing. It is not gone. There will be cases out there that we don't know about because not everyone gets tested. Not everyone gets tested as fast as they should. All of those things mean it will be bubbling. And if we let our guard down, then it will be back. Today's a day to be optimistic. Today's a day to be, as Victorians, to be proud of what we have been able to achieve. There's been a lot of pain, a lot of hurt. There's a need for healing, for investment, for all sorts of repair at a very personal level as well as in broader terms. But the most important thing that all of us have to do is to stay the course on this, to be as stubborn as this virus. It is wildly infectious. It's silent. It moves quickly. We just have to make sure that we are at least a step ahead of this virus. We are now, and if everyone plays their part, we will stay a step ahead of this. And then a vaccine will come, and we'll be able to put this coronavirus behind us. But no one can assume that because we want it to be over, it's over, and because we've had 9 days of zero, it's gone, and somehow those numbers are the same as a vaccine against this deadly virus. They are not. I'm really confident that all the work that's been done to get us here will be maintained, and it will keep us in a place where we can continue to open up, have rules that drive more economic activity, more social freedom, a greater connectedness with the people that we've missed the most. But it's got to be done steady, and it's got to be done safe. So the message and the appeal to every single Victorian is today's a day to be very positive and very optimistic about the future. But the constant refrain has got to be stay safe in order to stay open. That's where we find ourselves today. I'll now ask the Minister just to speak to a couple of matters, and then we're happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you, Premier. So I'll address both healthcare workers and the blitz on enforcement. So today marks the first day since early March that there are no active healthcare worker infections. That is a substantial milestone, and what we can all do to thank our healthcare workers for their sacrifices, for their efforts, and for their amazing commitment to the people of Victoria is to stay safe and to follow the rules. During the course of the pandemic, 3,574 coronavirus cases were reported in healthcare workers. And then by the time you multiply out the number of close contacts that were furloughed, there are many, many, many tens of thousands of healthcare workers who have sacrificed a lot together with their families, together with their co-workers, on all of our behalf. And that's why we can all repay that amazing contribution to the people of Victoria by following the rules and enduring the sort of support that the Premier has indicated. That is why, amongst other things, there is a blitz on enforcement as we open up carefully and sustainably. Over the course of yesterday, DHHS authorised officers, Victoria Police, WorkSafe and other enforcement agencies were out and about in both metropolitan and regional Victoria, particularly focusing on retail and hospitality. I'm very pleased to confirm that the overwhelming majority of businesses do the right thing and were compliant. Having said that, there is absolutely no room for complacency, and we understand that whilst many were doing the right thing and want to do the right thing, there were far too many instances of businesses not doing the right thing. Just from yesterday alone, there were 121 instances from 784 businesses that were visited actively by compliance officers that have resulted in 36 infringements, 47 matters being followed up again today with those businesses, and 14 warnings issued. The main compliance breaches related to lack of signage, breaches of density quotas, incomplete contact registers, and inadequate hygiene provisions. The enforcement officers will be out again today and will continue to be out as we carefully and sustainably reopen. it's an obligation on all businesses to stay safe and to follow the Chief Health Officer's COVID safe work plans so we can all stay open and repay that amazing contribution of our healthcare workers to keeping us safe. So I'll hand back to you, Premier.
We're happy to take any questions you have.
Premier, just on masks, I know you think that they're very, very effective. I imagine that's so if people are wearing them properly. It seems from my own witnessing what's happening is a lot of people are not wearing them properly, or a lot of people are taking them off a lot, or wearing them around their chin, or not covering their nose.
Yeah, look,
Is it going to be effective if they're not wearing them?
Well, there'll always be a percentage of people who don't necessarily wear the mask properly. We couldn't have been clearer with people. You need to wear the mask when you're outside your home, and you need to wear the mask properly. That's no reason to get rid of them, though, when they continue to play, I think, a really important part. Just that additional insurance to make sure that you're not inadvertently infecting someone else, or someone's infecting you. This is not a pleasant thing to have to do, but we've done it for a while now. I think it's becoming part of our daily routine. I'm not for a moment saying that people are happy to be wearing masks, but they serve a purpose. They play a part in keeping these numbers low. That won't be the case forever. There'll be a time when we're able to change those rules, but if we want to continue to see these numbers, and see, the longer we hold these numbers low, the better the base is, if you like, as we start to open up more and more. These few weeks, months even, are precious. If we can continue to see numbers that are very, very low, then given the life cycle of this virus, then we can have greater confidence that we will, yes, see some cases in the future, but we will see less of them, and they'll be able to be managed with a greater degree of certainty as we look forward into 2021. We will get a vaccine at some point, but exactly when, how long it takes to manufacture, how long it takes to give everybody their shots, it's going to take some time. So the more we can do now to really contain this and keep it very, very low, that will serve us well into the future. As soon as we can change on the best of health advice, the settings around masks, we will. But until then, you need to wear them, and you need to wear them properly. And around your neck is not wearing your mask properly, and that's potentially putting people at risk. Indeed, you put yourself at risk.
So what is the threshold then for not wearing masks, say, as you're walking down your suburban street outside, no one around you? Like, surely 4 active cases, like, it doesn't get much lower than that. Again,
today's not a day to be negative. Today's a day to be very positive. No, I'm talking about what I'm about to say, Lundy. Today's not a day to be negative. Today's a day to be positive. And I don't think it's too much to ask people in all circumstances outside their home right now. This won't be here forever, but I'm not making any announcements to masks, to changes to masks today. Might I be able to make some announcements in 2 weeks, 3 weeks' time? Maybe. And if we can, we will.
What is the purpose of having a mask on when you are outside and there is absolutely no one around you?
Well, because it's the simplest and easiest rule. It's the simplest and easiest rule to follow.
People have been pretty good at accommodating
they have, and
rule changes, so why can't we
Well, because I'm not announcing that today, Alex. The rules that are simple are always best. Masks serve a very important purpose. Will they be with us forever? No. When we get a chance to make a change, then of course we will. But at this stage, I'm not announcing any changes to masks. But what I can say is that I'm very, very grateful to all Victorians, the vast, vast majority of which are wearing their mask, and they take it very seriously because they know that it protects others and it also protects them.
Wouldn't it be easier to enforce a rule if it was if police only had to enforce it in areas where there were more people or around in shopping centres rather than having them kind of have to enforce this rule across the whole entire state?
No, I've got no reports that police are finding any difficulties in enforcing these rules. The rules are really simple. If you're outside your home, you need to wear a mask. Now, there'll be a time, hopefully soon, when we can make some changes. But again, the other thing too is, let's go back to this central point. I don't think it's too much to ask. There are plenty of countries around the world that wish they'd gone to masks months ago. They didn't. And now they are facing a very different set of circumstances as they look to their winter. As we look to our summer and a COVID normal Christmas, we can be proud, we can be optimistic, we can be positive about what the next few months and indeed 2021 is going to look like. Masks have played an important part in that. Are they everything? No. Will they be with us forever? No. But I'm not making any announcements today about changes to masks. They're really important, and we just need to stay the course on this. As we've proven, I think, as a state, to the amazement of many, not me, but to the amazement of many, we've proven equal to this task, and that makes us internationally unique.
Can we ask Brett Sutton a question on masks?
Sure.
If that's okay, please. Hi, just around the public health advice and on the science on when masks are appropriate to, or I guess when it's appropriate to reduce the amount of times we wear masks, and I guess in the settings that we wear masks.
I don't know that I've got anything to add beyond what's been said. There'll be a time when we change the settings on masks, but they're useful because they reduce transmission from anyone who might have infection. We don't know the actual caseload out there. Obviously, we've got 9 days of zeros, which is absolutely fantastic. But there can be individuals who haven't been identified, and masks play a role both for someone who's symptomatic, but also in that 2 days before you're symptomatic, and it reduces the risk significantly if both the person who's infected and the person near them are both wearing masks.
Is there a number of active cases, for example, or 14 days of no new cases that you're looking forward to I guess changing the rules on masks?
Yeah, we'll look into the exact epidemiology and the cost benefit, if you like. But at the moment, we're not in a place where there are no close contacts who might still develop illness. We've still got active cases. That situation, I'm sure, will change over the next couple of weeks.
Brett, just with I think you said 4 active cases, how many do you actually more suspect are out there? I mean, at the start of this pandemic, you were talking about, there was 5 times whatever it might be showing up in tests. Is that still the case, do you think?
I think it's hard to know. It's fantastic to see the levels of testing that are going on. We do know that 20% of people on average require hospital if they're infected. So I think it's unlikely that there'll be significant numbers out there that are undetected, because they would end up presenting to the emergency department needing hospital admission. All of those individuals who've got suspected COVID are getting tested on arrival in acute health services. We're not seeing people being picked up by virtue of that. That said, there might be younger, healthier individuals in the population who might have very mild symptomatic illness or virtually no symptoms who don't require any kind of healthcare intervention that allow that transmission to continue. So testing remains really important for that.
So we're not at effective eradication yet?
Who knows? It's possible, but I think we shouldn't work on that assumption, because that would change the way that we behave, that would change the way we're going about testing, and the testing's a really critical element at the moment. So the best assumption to make is that there are more cases out there and that we need to continue testing to find them.
Is the sewage testing telling us whether there is cases out there, or is there a problem with shedding the virus still that we can't tell?
I mean, the sewage testing's been valuable. It'll be most valuable in about a month. There are many regional sites that are showing no virus at all, where our case data tells us that there are no cases as well. So that correlation of zero detection in sewage and 0 cases is really confidence building. We are getting some positives from our big western and eastern treatment plants. One or the other of those has been positive in the most recent sampling. That's not unexpected. They've got catchments of hundreds of thousands, if not more than 1 million. So I expect that they'll remain positive even after these last cases recover. It's been known that sewage can remain positive for 4, 5, 6 weeks after cases have recovered. But when you get down to very low case numbers, the amount of virus in sewage becomes harder and harder to detect. But you can probably detect it, a case per 10,000 in the catchment. So when all sewage is negative in Victoria, that'll be a really useful time to then monitor continuously. If anything pings positively, then we'll absolutely be investigating for cases out there and prompting people to get tested.
In terms of some of the rules going forward, in terms of indoor community sport, stuff like basketball and netball, can those sort of leagues restart, social leagues restart?
They will be. There'll be significant changes to indoor contact sport for kids and adults from the 22nd of November. So I think that's a setting that will allow both the sport to resume and for a certain patronage to be there to watch as well.
Just with cinemas and food and drink facilities, why is there a difference between the number of patrons there could be in a theatre compared to the number of patrons who are allowed to be at a restaurant?
Certainly, in a theatre, you'll be sitting there for an hour and a half, 2 hours continuously. The kind of monitoring that is done in the hospitality sector and the enforcement that can happen in that sector is greater. You're not going to have anyone walking through a cinema to check on spacing or the way that individuals are behaving there. I think it's an appropriate setting for this stage in terms of numbers and the density quotient. But it is an indoor space where people will spend quite a bit of time with complete strangers other than their immediate booking friends or family.
With hospitality venues, though, you can book for up to 2-hour bookings. In a cinema or in a theatre, you can possibly have ushers or close off seats. I guess, so what's the difference between having that at a theatre and a cinema and allowing 2 hours, allowing people to be at hospitality venues?
I think there are elements where the registration of those who are attending, the hygiene requirements, all of the compliance and enforcement that happens in the hospitality sector makes it a little bit different to those settings. But they will also get to a point in time where we can have greater confidence that the numbers can increase as well. But it is that high risk environment that combines both indoor people who you don't normally know being in close proximity with you and that extended period of time that you're together.
Are you comfortable that we're in a position to restart international arrivals into Victoria?
I'm not the one to make the call on the readiness of hotel quarantine, but my understanding is that we're ready to go at whatever point that decision is made, and certainly the inputs that my public health team have made around infection prevention and control and the oversight and the key performance indicators for that are all in place and ready to go.
Did you think we would get to this point by now?
I did. We backed the modelling that we commissioned and supported. We weren't using just one input in that regard. We were also looking at the experiences of other jurisdictions that had gotten to those low numbers in terms of what that represented as a risk of resurgence and what the trajectory would look like. And that's what it told us. And I'm very pleased that that's been validated and vindicated.
Brett, what do you say to the people who say this couldn't be done?
I don't really mind. I'm just happy that we're here. I think if there's a lesson for anyone, it's that, science-based disciplines use empirical data and use really sophisticated modelling and other science-based, evidence-based inputs to try and make the best decisions. It doesn't mean that they're foolproof. It doesn't mean that there isn't some uncertainty in all of that. But the discipline of science is use evidence, use the robustness of the philosophy and art that science is to guide and to be open to all of the new inputs as they arrive. And if there's new evidence that suggests that we should take a different tack on something, that we should change the advice and recommendations from a policy perspective, then we should do so. So it's not perfect. Nothing is perfect in the way that you formulate policy in this space, but it's been extraordinarily helpful to get us here.
For a decision on weddings, it seems like they're a little bit further behind. Is that because they've been identified as a higher risk?
There's certainly a higher risk. I guess the difference between weddings and funerals is that weddings, and maybe it's not true for everyone in terms of the pressing desire or need to get married, but it's something that can be deferred for potentially a later period. And again, after the 22nd of November, those settings I would fully expect to change. And, booking a wedding beyond that date, I think will give a greater allowance for the numbers there. But the close proximity of people Again, people who aren't normally in close contact necessarily means that it's been identified as a risk of transmission.
Premier, just on the point Lundy raised about returning flights, no.
There are a lot of countries looking to Victoria at the moment, and I believe you spoke with Irish health authorities recently. What's been your advice to other countries and to other jurisdictions?
Certainly, we were sharing both our challenges and our successes. The stage 4 restrictions are not the science. That was the tool that was used. But the lesson from Melbourne is everything that we did in that time as we drove numbers down, and having a deep understanding of the kind of settings that we needed to get to the numbers that we needed and what the risk was of resurgence. And so the stage 4 restrictions were the tool, but the way that we've worked on the turnaround time for pathology testing, the way that we've worked on reducing the time for case and contact management and outbreak management tools have been really fundamental. The agent-based modelling that has informed where we'd get to and how we'd get there. All of those things were shared with the Health Minister and other public health experts in Ireland. I've got an invitation to do a kind of virtual town hall with them and to have some other European folk speak in the week ahead. I think if there are lessons for anyone, it's that it's achievable and that the real benefit is getting to those sustainable low numbers and using the lessons that you've learned over that period of time to keep them there. We've obviously learned a lot about what the challenging settings were. Aged care, enormously vulnerable, and those amplifying environments of abattoirs and food distribution centres and other warehouse centres with a large working population who are very mobile. So all of those things are things that I've been very happy to share with the Health Minister in Ireland.
Just on that point, sorry, you said other European countries. Which other countries?
I'm not sure. It's being hosted in Ireland, but they'll put the word out to whomever is happy to chime in at that time. It'll be relatively early morning for Europe.
Will those workforces that you just mentioned go back to full capacity now or soon?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
And is that because sentinel testing in those work sites gives you confidence that there won't be, another Cedar Meads type situation?
I think it's all of the things that have been put in place. So obviously there's the COVID safe standards that they're all meeting. It's the compliance and enforcement oversight that's happening. So I'm confident that both with the reduced transmission that we've got in Victoria, plus everything that they're doing right, plus the sentinel testing that's going on for those higher risk workplaces all coming together, that makes them able to operate at full capacity.
There are a lot of health workers who are still very concerned about the risk of spread through aerosol transmission and that they're not being given adequate PPE for that. Are they wrong? Are they overstating it? Or is it time to rethink the approach here and acknowledge that aerosol transmission is a real risk and therefore prepare our health workers?
I've never spoken against the risk of aerosol transmission. I think we recognise that there are aerosol generating procedures and aerosol generating behaviours and the setup of certain settings that make the risk of transmission, airborne transmission, greater. And so we do need to address all of the elements. But the primary one is the closeness of interaction and the PPE that needs to be worn for that direct clinical interaction. But ventilation plays a role, the patient flow, the workflow, all of the other behaviours around that. I think we've addressed that. The healthcare worker wellbeing task force is looking at all of those elements. So it's not excluding airborne transmission as a possibility, but it does recognise that close proximity interactions are the primary means of transmission, and so managing that and managing the appropriate PPE for those clinical interactions are the most important things. And the PPE advice in Victoria has always been at or above the national standards.
Premier, just to put on the returning international flights, have you had a chance to consider those recommendations of the Code Inquiry?
I'm still partway through that. I haven't completed that. We'll have announcements to make when we're ready to do so. This has got to be done properly. It's got to be done right. But we would we'll have more to say soon. It's really important that we build a model that is takes into account the recommendations and the findings that Judge Coate has given us. But it's also important to acknowledge this is a national scheme, so we have to have it's not just a matter of us having confidence in the arrangement, we have to have other First Ministers, National Cabinet need to be confident in the arrangements as well. But our aim is to have people back by Christmas, and we're working very hard to try and achieve that.
Just on Christmas, what is it going to look like? Give us an idea of what
Hopefully,
normal home gathering Christmas.
We'll be able to have more to say on the 22nd of November about, for instance, the settings that will relate to your own family home by that stage, the number of visitors you can have, any limits about how many households they can come from. Where I'd like to get to is a number that's certainly more than 10, and I'm confident that it will be, and also a freedom of movement, if you like. That is to say that people from multiple households can come to your home, not 10, more than that, but it's very difficult for us to speculate any further. But again, we are very confident that we can have a lot more to say and be as definitive as possible on the 22nd about what will happen a little more than a month later. So we do have a little bit of time, and again, we've been driven by the data all the way along, and that's what's got to keep on driving us. What's actually occurring? How much testing is being done? Have we got enough test results from every part of the state? Are people following the rules? All of those things. That'll give us greater confidence, and then we can be much more definitive just in a couple of weeks' time about what Christmas will look like. But I think a COVID normal Christmas, we are going to be able to deliver that. We're going to be able to enjoy it. What's still a little bit uncertain is what is the difference between a COVID normal Christmas and a normal Christmas. There will be some differences, but we're trying to get those as small, as minimal as they possibly can be.
School camps go ahead.
Sorry?
School camps, can they start resuming?
I'm not sure exactly where we've landed on school camps, particularly given how late into the year we are, but I'm more than happy to come back to you.
Just back on quarantine, how much work has the government done over the past few months for at-home monitoring, the use of wristbands or ankle bracelets, things like that?
Yeah, there's been lots of work done in lots of different areas to be ready, but again, I'm not in a position to be able to confirm one way or the other whether that'll be a feature of the reset scheme. But there's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes in lots of different areas. But we've got to consider fully what the board has given to us, as well as, can I say, as bad as things were in late March, arguably the rest of the world is much worse today. So we're going to see, I think, a greater percentage of people who are returning home that have got it. All of them will need to be treated as if they did. But I think we will see a greater percentage of people who've actually got the virus. When you think about in the United States, it's now quite routine to have 100,000 cases a day, and there's even prospect of having as many as 200,000 cases in a single day. Europe, numbers that aren't too far behind that, and if you start to aggregate some of the worst countries, then you are talking at least 100,000 cases a day, more than that even. So it's very, very challenging. That's the right to come home is a very important thing, and we want to try and facilitate that, but it's got to be done safely, and we'll be able to respond to the report soon.
Do you need to make that announcement sooner rather than later, given the time it takes for airlines to schedule flights, people to book, make arrangements? I mean, realistically, that announcement needs to be made probably within a week.
I won't put a timeline on it, but what I will say to you is that we haven't got weeks and weeks. Obviously, if you've got a 2-week quarantine period and the aim is to have people at home by Christmas for a COVID normal Christmas, then they would need to have done their time, however long that was, in whatever setting that is. We're just working through those issues, and again, I think whilst there is a need to give people as much certainty as possible, I think there is a greater imperative to set it up properly, and that's exactly what we intend to do.
During the inquiry, we found out that when those passengers from the Greg Mortimer cruise ship had arrived, you wanted them quarantined at a hotel closer to Tullamarine Airport. I guess, is there, has the government decided on whether these hotels or the hotels will be closer to Tullamarine Airport?
No,
would it be
I think,
in the city again?
I'll just take you back, Samaya. When the Greg Mortimer cruise ship and a flight with about 112 people on it, I think, if memory serves me correctly, from Montevideo were coming here, where there was at least 70, 75 of those people were positive, and the expectation was that there may well be people that would die during the flight, and that there would be further spread so that everybody on the flight would have it by the time the cabin door was opened. I wanted it tested. Could we put them close to the airport? That was looked at. Ultimately, it was determined that wouldn't necessarily be, couldn't be stood up quickly, because we didn't determine the timing on when the flight came. It was a very, very challenging set of circumstances, but it was very well handled. So that demonstrates to you that these things can be well handled, and I intend to make sure that they are. Where people are housed and for how long and all of those issues, if you look at the report, there's a number of key decisions that have to be made there, and we'll make those as soon as we can.
Is there an argument, though, right now to no longer house people or quarantine return travellers in the CBD, given there's a lot more movement and we're returning to a relatively COVID normal?
Look, there are lots of different arguments, one way or the other, and the important thing here is to consider those in a very methodical way, just move through that process, and then stand here and make some announcements when we're ready to be able to do that. That isn't for today, but it will be soon.
How likely is it, though, that those people will be quarantined in the CBD, or are you sort of considering locations outside of Melbourne or outside of, relatively dense
everything is on the table, I suppose, is the best way I can answer it for you. But I would point you to the pretty clear narrative in Justice Coates' first report, where there are a number of core principles. Every return traveller should be assumed to have it. At the same time, people should be housed close to health services, close to a whole range of different things that they might need, all of those sorts of things. So we just have to work through all of that, and we are. Ministers have already, Triple C's already had a couple of discussions about this, and we will continue to work through those issues, and then we'll have more to say.
The ring of steel being lifted, would you like to see other borders lift their restrictions on Victorians, considering how far we've gone?
Oh, look, I have been at pains not to be critical of what other states have done. I think if the circumstances were reversed, we probably would have made the same choices. I'm very pleased that Gladys has indicated that she'll be opening 2 weeks from now, so on that weekend of the 22nd, 23rd, and she wouldn't do that if she didn't have confidence that we, as a Victorian community, are well and truly a step ahead of this thing. That is positive, and I would then hope, and I'd be confident that other states will make similar decisions. Whether it's on exactly the same timeline, that's a matter for them, but all of us have signed up, with the possible exception of WA, we've all signed up to having the nation reunified, so those internal borders gone by the end of the year. That's certainly my view. That'll be the common view shared between New South Wales and Victoria in a very practical sense in just a couple of weeks' time. I know that other states and territories are very keen to be open also, so hopefully we can get to that.
Have you spoken to the Prime Minister about these steps we're taking tomorrow?
No, I haven't, but I may speak with him this week, just to give him an update on where things are at. But he can read numbers just as well as the next person, and the numbers are low.
Has the crisis cabinet been wrapped up? You're moving back?
Yes, we had our 99th meeting yesterday, and we'll move now to a Coordinating Ministers Committee. ERC will be stood up again, and a number of other cabinet committee changes that'll be made. But that's as tempting as it was to have 100 meetings, Rich. The mood of the room was that 99 was enough, and so we pulled that up yesterday, and we'll move to a slightly different footing. But again, that's not to say that every decision will be made by full cabinet. We have a cabinet committee system. We've always had a cabinet committee system, and it serves us well. It just means you can get a lot more done in a shorter period of time, without having meetings that would, by their very nature, have to run for 8 or 10 hours. So, yeah, and look, it's a bit like the state of disaster, but keeping the state of emergency, Triple C going, but Coordinating Ministers Committee coming back in, as it's always been the case, and a myriad of other examples. We're in a different phase now, and that's something that Victorians should be very pleased about, very proud of, but vigilant in the defence of that. We can't, for a moment, having come this far, having built this thing that is so precious but fragile, surely all of us know and fundamentally understand that we can't be complacent. 9 days, doesn't matter how many days of zero, it's not the same as a vaccine. There will be some virus out there. We think it's in very, very low numbers, and we can keep on top of it. But we've got to safeguard what we've built.
The Department of Jobs is trialling a QR code,
Yes.
a range of businesses for the next fortnight. Do you
Yeah.
expect to roll out the government's QR code like straight after that trial period ends?
I can't give you an exact date. I'm not sure. There'll be analysis and evaluation as the trial unfolds. It's not like they'll wait right till the end and then it'll take a period of time. But I can try and come back to you, Samaya, on what we think the likely timeline is. There's a couple of challenges here. We want the system to speak seamlessly to the CRM system, which we think is best in class anywhere across the country, so it's got to be completely plugged into that. But the other thing too is, for many months now, many different settings, different businesses have had their own systems, and we want to make sure that those products speak to our QR product, if that makes sense, so that everybody is inputting into our end-to-end digital platform. So we've got real time, we can see everything that's on the board, we can see the full field of play, and we can then have a public health intervention in any setting if we get a positive case.
Over the weekend on that, with the QR system, I did personally witness some people struggling with mobile phones, not having mobile phones, elderly people unable to use them.
It kind of goes to that point I've made a few times, doesn't it? The pen and paper sometimes.
A system in place that businesses can use even if they have a QR system.
Well, what we'll have to do is, as the example that you've just cited, not everybody, I know it's hard for, probably it's a reflection of the work we do and maybe our age and things, although you're all, anyway, your age rather than mine. It's hard to conceive that people don't have a mobile phone or a smart device, but a lot of people don't. And therefore there'll have to be a hybrid, if you like. So we want a seamless product that all the different QR or app-based stuff can speak to our system, and the product we put out there obviously has to seamlessly be able to connect with our system. But then there may well need to be some pen and paper as well for those who simply don't have a phone or don't have the phone with them, or whatever it might be.
And establishments won't be able to refuse people entry if they have a valid reason for not being able to.
No, I wouldn't think so, and I don't think that venues are about refusing people. In fact, most of the communications I get from venues and those who speak for them is they want more people in their venue, not less, but they want it done safe. Again, I think common sense can drive us here. We can have absolutely elite product, but there will be, as you say, Alex, there'll be examples where people don't necessarily have a phone. So old-fashioned pen and paper will be an important part of that.
COVID safe marshals in gyms, who are they? Who pays for them?
The Chief Health Officer might be in a better position to answer that. If he's not in detail, still being worked through. And we do have a little bit of time.
Though.
Sorry?
They reopen tomorrow.
Yeah, well, I'll come back to you, Candice. I don't have a detailed answer to that question.
So they're preparing to reopen tomorrow today, and they've just learned they need a COVID safe marshal on site. They don't know if that's a staff member existing who they trained today, or if that's somebody they need to get in.
Well, let me get you an answer as soon as I possibly can. I'm not going to make it up from the podium. I don't think that would be a very good thing to do. Someone will have the answer. I don't have the answer. I'm being completely upfront with you. Neither does the Chief Health Officer, but we'll get you the answer.
Just to clarify, sleepovers for children. There seems to be a lot of parents trying to organise sleepovers.
If that's your
for
one,
their kids.
so what you can, at the moment you've got one visiting event. From tonight, you move to 2 visiting events a day. Still can only be 2 adults though. They can be from different households. Your guests can stay over, but again, we just ask people to use as much common sense as they possibly can muster. There's obviously a higher risk if someone's in your home for a long period of time, but the rules actually provide for that. And if there's a need for us to put some clarification down, a paragraph on exactly that issue, because I know it is an important one, we're more than happy to do that.
Just on hospitality, does the results of yesterday's Blitz give you pause when you talk about having more people in hospitality venues, that so many of them were breaching the rules yesterday?
Well, look, we're always cautious because, and we've been very clear about that, and we've been criticised, a lot for being cautious. But that's how you have to be. And you've heard me say many, many times, well, over the journey, but certainly since we've started to open up, that we all have a part to play. And that means the government's got a part to play. That's why we've got a public health response, a contact tracing system that's second to none. And that isn't just my view. That's Alan Finkel's view. That's all manner of the data doesn't lie. The data tells you the absolute truth. We have been able to get across outbreaks really quickly, and we're exceeding all those national benchmarks. Beyond that, though, businesses have got a part to play in that. Families have got a part to play in that. Each of us, regardless of the job we do, each of us in the choices we make every day, we have to make smart choices for ourselves, for our family, and for every family. So it's never good to see some businesses not doing the right thing. However, it's not a punitive thing. We visit them. They're all on notice, all of them. This blitz is not the first, and it won't be the last. But many more warnings than fines get issued, and we want to work with business. And I think the overwhelming majority of businesses want to do the right thing. Sometimes there can be a little bit of confusion. I think this stuff's reasonably straightforward, but there can be some confusion. But ultimately, it's about working with people. But businesses have to know that this is not optional. This is not a goodwill thing. Like, you have to do this, and there are significant penalties if you don't. So we're not heavy-handed about it, though. We're trying to educate people. But there has to be a sense that there is checking being done. If it's just some honesty policy, then we won't see the sort of compliance we need to deliver the numbers that we want. And again, many times I've made the point, but I will make it again. There's a very small margin for error here, so all of us have to play our part.
There's an inquiry in New South Wales at the moment into Crown, and
Yes.
I guess their dealings, I guess following revelations that Crown worked with junket providers who had clear links to Asian triad gangs. And the
Yes.
councils assisting in New South Wales have submitted that Crown is unsuitable as a licensee due to its failures to protect staff in China before their arrest in 2016, and that the New South Wales casino regulator should consider banning Mr Packer due to his harmful influence over the company. Does that make you pause and reflect on Crown in Victoria and Crown's licensing here in Victoria?
Well, Crown is a publicly listed company, so and the process that you've just gone to is not a completed process. Council Assisting have made submissions, and as I understand it, the final report of that inquiry is not due until February. So I think we should patiently wait to see what the final outcomes are. Submissions from Council Assisting are not unimportant, but they're not the final report. They're not the findings, as it were. They are advice to the person who's running that inquiry as to what they should find. It's free for them to make whatever findings they believe marry up with the evidence. I can tell you that there is a very strict process in place in our state under Acts of the Victorian Parliament. They have their own act, given that it's a unique venue. There's a 5-year review, the last one of which was conducted, I believe, in 2018. That's a regular rolling program, and we are always minded. Any player in gaming in our country, the VCGLR, those who regulate this industry, look to reports, findings, good and bad, around the world. The good name and the good character and the standards that are upheld by any licensee or any prospective licensee is something that our regulator is constantly monitoring. And I can tell you that from personal experience, that is exactly the way the regulator acts. It's the way the regulator works. So no doubt they'll look at that report when it's finished, but I would just urge all of us not necessarily to assume what will be in that report, but to wait and see.
Is some of those evidence troubling, though, given what's been heard, James Packer's behaviour, about the behaviour of junket operators? I mean, it's not stuff that's new. It's been raised in the press before, and VCGL are still investigating some of these allegations. Sure,
and that's exactly why it's not really appropriate for me to be as if it were a journo and offering commentary. What's best for me to do, and for all of us to do, although you've got a different role to play, but what's best for me to do is to wait and see what that report is, and then our regulator would look at that and any other information, not just about this company, but about any company that was involved in the holding of any of those licences.
Is there an indictment, though, on Victoria and also Victorian authorities that New South Wales has concerns about what Crown is doing in Melbourne? Like, New South Wales has those concerns.
Well, they've got a number of matters that are on foot. They've got a casino that's about to open, as I understand it.
Yeah, but we have a casino that's open, and New South Wales is investigating, or the inquiry is about the things that are happening in an open casino here in Melbourne.
Well, there's been evidence-led. There's not been findings made. There's not a final report. That's the point I'm making. I think we have to just wait and see not what counsel assisting say the Board of Inquiry should find, but what the Board of Inquiry actually finds. That's, I don't think, too much of a stretch, and it's not like it's three years away. It's going to happen in February, I think, and our regulator will look at those findings as they do findings about anybody, anywhere. This is an international community, if you like, and your reputation, your good name, findings in favour, findings against, that whole sense of probity is something that's monitored every day across the world, because this industry needs to be to the highest standard, and that's always been the approach that's been taken.
On that basis, shouldn't our agencies be proactive on allegations that are being brought up? Because it's a legitimate inquiry. We'll obviously have findings.
Yeah, sure.
But given that this evidence has been put to this inquiry and clearly is going to play a role in the findings, shouldn't we be investigating it now?
Well, I'd need to go back and check exactly what investigations, what matters are live at the moment. I'm not announcing that there are, but I think, as Rich just indicated, I think some of these matters have been, and I'd need to check, they may be the subject of work that's being done by the VCGLR. They are an independent body. They report to the Minister, of course, but they don't report to me. But I'm more than happy to find out for you. The key point here is that there's a process in place. Let's wait and see where it lands. And the other thing too I would say to you is that a number of these processes are national. So, for instance, there are national codes, national regulation, national rules around money laundering, for instance. There's also incredibly cooperative relationships and partnerships between state-based regulators, national regulators, and states working together. So I wouldn't accept this any sense that the VCGLR here in Victoria isn't part of frameworks and processes and partnerships that mean we have the best of information in the best of time. But let's wait and see what this report says in February, and then we can be clearer about what we intend to do about it once we've actually seen it. Indeed, once it's actually been written.
A lot of the concerns have been raised in the public domain for a number of years now. VCLGR, they're investigating, but there has never been a Board of Inquiry like New South Wales is doing into a casino that is about to open, or that, you know, Crown wanted to open in New South Wales. Why has it taken a New South Wales inquiry to start getting to the bottom of what's going on in Crown here in Melbourne?
Well, again, I think it's important to wait and see exactly what they've got to the bottom of. We haven't got findings.
Why haven't we tried to get to the bottom of it?
Well, I would not accept your contention that there's not a rigorous process, because there have been fines levied, and some of them have been the biggest fines levied on any gaming company in the history of our state, certainly perhaps the country. Again, I'd need to go back and check the record, but I think the notion that this is an unregulated space and we're all waiting around for Sydney to do our job for us is just wrong. It's just absolutely wrong. There's a big team who work very hard, but the work in another state is not finished yet, and we need to let it finish, and then we'll be in a better position to speak more freely about it. Not because it's inappropriate to comment, but because it's not actually written yet. The report isn't written. So
Fire Rescue Victoria.
Yes.
Are you aware of the concerns that people are having with the CFA and MFB moulding together, creating problems, and may create problems in the upcoming fire season?
I've got no advice to that effect, but again, I'm happy to check it out for you.
Given that there's been a long history of bad culture among some of the staff and the volunteers, do you not think that there would be issues?
Well, if there were issues, Alex, I think they would have been raised. They haven't been raised, but that's not to...
They haven't been raised with you, or they haven't?
No, they haven't been raised with me. So, but I'm more than happy to check on it for you.
Host of Joe Biden here is Vice President. Are you keen to have him back as President?
Sorry?
Host of Joe Biden here.
Well, I did, yeah. No, I was very pleased to spend quite a bit of time with then Vice President Joe Biden when he came to open the Comprehensive Cancer Centre. It was part of his work and the Project Moonshot that he and President Obama had put together, vast sums of money to provide better care for those living with cancer. And that was something that was very personally important to him, very personally important to me, and indeed to every single family. So it was a great visit. I know him. He's a person of outstanding character and just pure decency. And I want to congratulate him and Vice President-elect Harris. This is we'd be thrilled to have either President-elect Biden or Vice President-elect Harris come back to Melbourne, that'd be just fantastic.
Can I just go back to Crown again? Sorry.
Sure.
When New South Wales Inquiry hands down its report in February, would BCLGR sort of adopt the recommendations? Would they look at the recommendations? What's going to happen in February from Victorian authorities?
What I can do is get you, I'll ask them what it is they intend to do if they've turned their mind to that. They've got a job to do every day, and they take the most contemporary information from around the world about anybody who's a player or might be, someone who's bidding for a licence, someone who holds a licence. There are very strict and very important obligations on anybody in this industry, and they should be held to the highest of standards, and I'm confident that they are. But it's very difficult for a regulator in, say, our state or in WA or Queensland, because particularly WA, this business is not just a Sydney and Melbourne business, they have other interests. Very difficult for regulators to simply take the submissions of counsel assisting rather than a final report and then for it to be assumed that they should be acting on that. It's just a matter of time. It's not that long. We'll wait, get those important findings, whatever they might be, and if they're relevant to us, then I'm confident that our independent regulator will do what needs to be done.
Is it not ringing significant alarm bells, though?
I think I've already answered that, Laurel. Like, we've got this business has been fined. There have been all manner of different work that's done. Again, I don't have a list of all the things that have happened in the last few years, but there's a process that's going on in Sydney. As it relates to us, we'll be able to make those judgments when the report's written, when the report's handed down. That's not till February, and I really don't think it's reasonable to expect any regulator in another state to be going off submissions made by counsel assisting rather than the final report, which is being written now. We just have to wait those couple of months. But it's also, again, I just want to make the point, I think I have it, I want to make the point again. It is wrong to assume or assert that this is an unregulated space. It is a highly regulated space. VCGLR are serious people who do very important work, and they are absolutely focused on only the highest of standards, regardless of who the operator is or what the setting is. But across this sector, they are absolutely motivated by that and nothing else. That's always been my experience. I had the honour of being their minister, the VCGLR's minister, for a short period of time. Did a few licence renewals myself. I know and understand how seriously they take their role, and no Victorian should doubt it.
Are you aware of the Department of Premier and Cabinet engaging an external company to look at the document leak of the roadmap?
I'm not aware of that. No.
You're not aware of that? You've previously said that it was DHS's responsibility to look at
would
these
be,
kind of things.
it would be, I would think.
Would you be concerned if DPC was one of the agencies?
No, not at all. I wouldn't be concerned with that. Ultimately, they're matters for departmental secretaries, but might be news to some. But cabinet in confidence means something, and secretaries will, from time to time, deal with issues as they arise. That's not something that I turn my mind to, though.
Did you task DPC with looking into this matter or any other leaking?
As I've said to you many times, these matters are for departmental secretaries. I am not a departmental secretary.
Just a couple of questions on Belton Road. Sky News has seen emails from your department to DFAT from mid-2018 when they were trying to get advice on signing the MOU, saying, Director keen to land this ASAP, under some pressure from further up, apologies for being so pushy. Was it you that was trying to push the deal through as quickly as possible?
Well, this is really interesting, isn't it? Because for the longest of times I was accused of not having consulted DFAT. The very email that you're quoting from would put the lie to that. I'm not aware of that email, and we do things appropriately, all things at all times. My views on agreements that are about trade and jobs and investment are well known. They're not our only customer, but they are our biggest. And in my judgment, if you treat your biggest customers with respect and you have high quality product for them, then they stay your biggest customer. Alternative approaches, they don't tend to work out so well. But again, I'm not aware of that email.
Will the federal government this week is going to try and pass a bill that would put the deal at risk of being torn up? Is that a concern to you?
Well, apparently there's no more important matter in the federal parliament than to be dealing, and on the agenda of the federal government, than to be dealing with sister city arrangements, sister state arrangements, MOUs and partnerships across the board. I don't know that that's necessarily the biggest priority for our nation, but that's a matter for the Commonwealth Government, and as I'm sure Trade Minister Birmingham and the Prime Minister are very motivated to make sure that we've got only strong and productive partnerships to trade, to sell our goods, to create jobs and wealth in our state and right across our nation. That's what should drive us in all these things. It's certainly what's driven me. But again, I'm not a commentator on the federal parliament. They'll vote for whatever they vote for. They'll do whatever they want to do, and then people can make their own judgments about whether their priorities align with the priorities of ordinary, hard-working people or not. That's not my judgment to make.
Just to follow up a question that we previously asked in the press conference that you were going to follow up on. Were you aware...
That doesn't narrow it down, but anyway, yes.
Were you aware on the 27th of May that security guards within hotel quarantine had tested positive?
You've asked me this question before, and I thought we were going to get back to you because I can't recall exactly what I would have been aware of then. I was aware of. Sorry,
but you were aware. We're just trying to clarify. Were you aware that security guards had tested positive?
I'm not certain. I am aware that on or about that time there was an outbreak, and I think my answer to you previously was that I would have been aware of that.
And you were briefed that security guards had tested positive in hotel quarantine?
I don't know what I was briefed on at that time. I'm happy to go and check. I don't have the briefings in front of me.
That would be good.
There's nothing more or less to it than I would have been aware of the outbreak.
New Zealanders can start arriving here from tomorrow as part of the bubble.
Yes.
Do you think anyone's going to want to visit, given we have to wear masks?
I'm pretty sure that people visiting from New Zealand, and quite soon people visiting or returning from other parts of the world, will understand that the rules we have in place are to keep them safe and to keep other people safe. And in my experience, people are pretty big on safety. I certainly am. Masks will be there for as long as they are playing an important part in keeping all of us safe and keeping us open. No more, no less than that. If I could just finish by saying there's no other issues.
Can we just ask about the regional workforce? There seems to be a
Yes.
massive shortage of workers because there's no backpackers. What are we doing in that area to try and encourage?
Hopefully I should say two things. Firstly, there's quite a bit of work going on around getting a seasonal workforce here, but doing that safely is not an easy thing. It's quite a complex thing. That's part of a national framework. We've got a part to play in that, but there is a national process because these issues are not just about, say, the Goulburn Valley or the northwest of the state. They are in fact national. Hopefully we can have a bit more to say about that. Hopefully we can have a bit more to say about that soon. I don't have any announcements to make today, but we acknowledge the challenge and we're all working hard to try and get a creative and innovative solution to that.
Is it likely that there will be incentives through the budget to try and encourage people to move from metro out to regional areas that they need assistance?
No, I wouldn't assume that. But there are some other ways in which we can incentivise. Whether it's in the budget or not, there are some other things that we can do, and we're working very hard to work through those things. We don't want to see crops, regardless of their nature, not being harvested, and we don't want to see, for instance, fruit and veggie prices going up because we can't get the amount of volume that we need. So we're working towards some creative solutions in all of those areas, but that's not for today, but we will make announcements when we can.
The problem is that, especially in the stone fruit area, they've already flagged that within 2 weeks they're hitting peak season and they don't have enough people. So
and this is an issue in Victoria, it's an issue in New South Wales, it's an issue in every state, and we'll have more to say about it soon. No other issues? Please get tested, and get tested today if you've got any symptoms. Days of zero are fantastic, but they are not the same as a vaccine. The rules matter, and we all have to play our part. But today's a very positive day, a day where every Victorian can be optimistic that we will get to that COVID normal Christmas, and today's a big step towards that. Thank you all very much.
If you know like I know, you don't want to step to this. It's the G-Funk era, pumped out with a gangster twist. If you smoke like I smoke, then you're high like every day. And if your hands is a buster, 213 will regulate. If you know like I know, you don't want to step to this. It's the G-Funk era, pumped out with a gangster
There is no more important, no deeper, no broader, no closer relationship, no relationship more critical to Australia's strategic interests than the one that we enjoy with the United States, with its government and with its people. This relationship is bigger than any one individual, and those who have the great privilege to serve in either the offices of Prime Minister or President are the custodians of that enduring relationship. The United States is one of the world's greatest democracies, alongside Australia and many others. And democracy is proven not just in the times of still waters, but when those waters can get a bit choppy. And of course, we've seen that in recent times in the United States. But democracy is the process that they have always stood by to resolve such differences and to ensure that they can elect their leader and their leader can engage with the rest of the world, particularly with those countries with whom they share such deep and abiding interests as we do with the United States. Of course, there are processes that will still continue in the United States, and the institutions that sit around those are important to their democracy, and that's important, and they will continue. But I join with other nations' leaders around the world in congratulating President-elect Joe Biden and Dr. Jill Biden, together with Vice President-elect Kamala Harris and her partner Douglas Emhoff, for their election at this recent US election. This is a profound time, not just for the United States, but for our partnership and the world more broadly. And I look forward to forging a great partnership in the spirit of the relationships that have always existed between Prime Ministers of Australia and Presidents of the United States. I particularly look forward to this as President-elect Biden, because he comes to this relationship with a deep experience and a deep history. A history that has seen him come to Australia before, one that has involved many, many years of experience within the US system, and one that deeply understands this part of the world. When he was in Australia, on board the HMAS Adelaide, he said this: "Thank you for having America's back, and we will always have your back." During the same visit to Australia, he said America and Australia continue to look to one another for mutual support, and he described our alliance with the United States as the core of the US's vision for the Indo-Pacific. That was true then, and that is true now. President-elect Biden also has a deep understanding, I think, of the national security issues that confront not only the United States, but those more broadly across the world, and a deep personal understanding of them, obviously, with his late son Beau having served in Iraq. But you may not know that President-elect Biden had two uncles who served in New Guinea during the Second World War, one of whom who was killed in New Guinea and another who was seriously injured. So the relationship goes deep and it's personal. And I think that is something that will bring a lot to an understanding of the people-to-people relationship and the depth and history of the relationship between our two countries. I hope that he and Dr. Biden will join us here in Australia for the 70th anniversary of ANZUS. ANZUS has been the bedrock of our security foundations here in Australia since that alliance was first established. And I look forward to inviting the President-elect to join us next year in their formal capacities at that time, and for us to be able to celebrate 70 years of peace and stability and security that has been established by this incredible relationship. And so we look to begin a new chapter in this important relationship. We wish the American people all the very best. We are like-minded. We share values. We share an outlook, a peaceful outlook on the world and on life. A life where families can live together in peace and stability and pursue their own dreams and plan for their own futures with confidence. These are the values that we hold dear as two countries. But as one chapter opens, of course another chapter closes. And I want to thank President Trump and Vice President Pence, Secretary Pompeo, Secretary Mnuchin and the Secretary Esper and the many other members of his cabinet, with whom we have had a very, very good working relationship over the years of the Trump administration, and of course that will continue through the transition period. President Trump equally showed a great commitment to this part of the world and the relationship between Australia and the United States. This was also true of Vice President Pence, who I remember meeting for the first time in Papua New Guinea and spending some important time with him there as we discussed the challenges, particularly in the Southwest Pacific, and how we could work together, and as we have been. Secretary Pompeo has also been a great voice for peace around the world, and I thank him for his special relationship with Australia. And Secretary Mnuchin, who I had the opportunity to work with both as Treasurer and as Prime Minister. This relationship is bigger than all of us. And in the time we serve in the roles that we have the privilege to serve in, we share a custodian for that relationship. And I have every confidence, because this confidence is based on more than 100 years of successful partnership, that this partnership will only go from strength to strength under the new shared stewardship that President-elect Biden and I will share going into the future. Thank you very much.
Prime Minister, with President-elect so strong on climate change, how will that influence Australia's commitment to climate change, and especially the net zero by 2030?
Well, Australia's commitment to addressing climate change will continue. We are signatories to the Paris Agreement. That is something that we held fast to, and not only held fast to, but we have a very strong story to tell about our achievement when it comes to our commitments on the global stage, whether it's exceeding both the Kyoto 1 and the Kyoto 2 targets, and now being able to confidently meet our 2030 commitments. And should the United States, which I assume they will under President-elect Biden, join the Paris Agreement, we welcome that. Australia never left. Australia was always there, meeting and keeping our commitments. I also particularly welcome the comments that were made during the campaign by Vice President Biden at the time, when he showed a lot of similarity to Australia's views on how technology can be used to address the lower emissions challenge. If we want to see global emissions fall, then it's not enough for us to meet our commitments. We need to have the transformational technologies that are scalable and affordable for the developing world as well, because that's where all the emissions increases are coming from in the decade ahead and the next 20 years. We need to ensure that those economies can successfully and commercially and prosperously transform through these technologies. And I believe we'll have a very positive discussion about the partnerships we can have with the United States about furthering those technological developments that will see a lower emissions future for the world, but a stronger economy as well, where we don't say goodbye to jobs that we don't have to say goodbye to. Okay, thank you all very much.
So if Trump, in the event that Trump kind of refuses to leave, what circumstances would Australia and other firm allies need to be to ask him to respect the vote of the Americans?
Look, I have great confidence in the institutions of America's democracy, and I've been expressing those consistently. I have taken a similar tone to so many others, and that is to express patience and respect for the US system. It's in fact, I think, a sentiment that President-elect Biden has also expressed. This isn't a time for those processes to finalise and for us to move on with the important work, because there are so many important challenges, whether here in the Indo-Pacific, when it comes to world trade, when it comes to dealing with the global pandemic and the global recession that has followed from that pandemic. There is much work for like-minded countries like Australia and the United States to get on with. And those processes in the United States will come to their conclusion, their transition will proceed as we always understand it to be. This is not a new process. This is a time-honoured process and a time-established process, and I have every confidence that it will resolve itself in time. Okay.
Prime Minister, what is Mr Trump's legacy in the Indo-Pacific region?
So I couldn't quite hear over the birds.
What is Mr Trump's legacy in the Indo-Pacific region?
There has been a tremendous commitment by the Trump administration here in the Indo-Pacific. We have seen, importantly, the Quad come back together again. Together, and the Malabar exercise that has been underway recently, I think, is a very good example of that. The bringing together of like-minded nations in the Indo-Pacific to work to one simple goal, and that is to see the prosperity of all countries and peace within the Indo-Pacific region. Whether that's here, whether that's in Indonesia, whether that's in Vietnam, in China, throughout Japan, South Korea, there has been an integration and I think an effort to try and bring people together in that regard, and we will continue that work because it's very important for Australia's interests. We want to see all of these countries succeed. When they do succeed, we can live together peacefully and prosperously.
Prime Minister, it's likely that the President-elect would rejoin the Trans-Pacific Partnership, perhaps in a more protectionist way than in 2016. What changes would you allow to the TPP if it were to enable the US to rejoin the partnership?
Well, look, we're one of many partners in the TPP. We're obviously champions of the TPP, and particularly in its resurrection after the Trump administration's election 4 years ago. And we're very pleased that we're able to keep the door open for the United States and many others to join as well. Now, the terms of how that would occur is one that would have to be done collectively with the other partners to that relationship. It is true that there are many similarities in the trade outlook of both sides of politics in the United States. I think we've seen that. But we would welcome the re-engagement in those trade forums because, you know, coming out of the COVID-19 recession, the way out is not to withdraw. The way out is not to pull back in. The way out is to reach out. The way out is to engage in market-based trade, fair trade, under proper rules through the World Trade Organization. And that's something we're very committed to, and we would welcome a commitment to that objective as well. That is going to help the world recover from the COVID-19 global recession. We're very committed to that course, and we welcome all other countries doing the same.
Are there any changes though that you wouldn't allow that are non-negotiable?
Look, I think it would be very early days to speculate on those matters. I would simply say to the United States, the door has always remained open on the TPP. It's open now, it'll be open in the future, and you're welcome anytime. Thank you very much.
The Vice President-elect of the United States of America, Kamala Harris.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. So, thank you. Good evening. So, Congressman John Lewis, before his passing, wrote, "Democracy is not a state, it is an act." And what he meant was that America's democracy is not guaranteed. It is only as strong as our willingness to fight for it. To guard it and never take it for granted. And protecting our democracy takes struggle.
It takes sacrifice, but there is joy in it, and there is progress, because we, the people, have the power to build a better future. And when our very democracy was on the ballot in this election, with the very soul of America at stake, and the world watching, you ushered in a new day for America. To our campaign staff and volunteers, this extraordinary team, thank you for bringing more people than ever before into the democratic process. And for making this victory possible. To the poll workers and election officials across our country who have worked tirelessly to make sure every vote is counted, our nation owes you a debt of gratitude. You have protected the integrity of our democracy. And to the American people who make up our beautiful country, thank you for turning out in record numbers to make your voices heard. And I know times have been challenging, especially the last several months. The grief, sorrow, and pain, the worries and the struggles. But we have also witnessed your courage, your resilience, and the generosity of your spirit. For 4 years, you marched and organized for equality and justice, for our lives and for our planet. And then you voted. And you delivered a clear message. You chose hope and unity, decency, science, and yes, truth. You chose Joe Biden as the next president of the United States of America. And Joe is a healer, a uniter, a tested and steady hand, a person whose own experience of loss gives him a sense of purpose that will help us as a nation reclaim our own sense of purpose. And a man with a big heart who loves with abandon. It's his love for Jill, who will be an incredible First Lady. It's his love for Hunter and Ashley and his grandchildren and the entire Biden family. And while I first knew Joe as vice president, I really got to know him as the father who loved Bo, my dear friend who we remember here today. And to my husband, Doug, and our children, Cole and Ella, and my sister Maya, and our whole family, I love y'all more than I can ever express. We are so grateful to Joe and Jill for welcoming our family into theirs on this incredible journey. And to the woman most responsible for my presence here today, my mother, Shamala Gopalan Harris, who is always in our hearts. When she came here from India at the age of 19, she maybe didn't quite imagine this moment, but she believed so deeply in an America where a moment like this is possible. And so I am thinking about her and about the generations of women, Black women, Asian, white, Latina, Native American women, who throughout our nation's history have paved the way for this moment tonight. Women who fought and sacrificed so much for equality and liberty and justice for all, including the Black women who are often, too often, overlooked, but so often prove they are the backbone of our democracy. All the women who have worked to secure and protect the right to vote for over a century, 100 years ago with the 19th Amendment, 55 years ago with the Voting Rights Act, and now in 2020 with a new generation of women in our country who cast their ballots and continued the fight for their fundamental right to vote and be heard. Tonight I reflect on their struggle, their determination, and the strength of their vision to see what can be unburdened by what has been. And I stand on their shoulders. And what a testament it is to Joe's character that he had the audacity to break one of the most substantial barriers that exists in our country and select a woman as his vice president. But while I may be the first woman in this office, I will not be the last. Because every little girl watching tonight sees that this is a country of possibilities. And to the children of our country, regardless of your gender, our country has sent you a clear message. Dream with ambition, lead with conviction, and see yourselves in a way that others may not, simply because they've never seen it before. But know that we will applaud you every step of the way. And to the American people, no matter who you voted for, I will strive to be a vice president, like Joe was to President Obama, loyal, honest, and prepared, waking up every day thinking of you and your family. Because now is when the real work begins, the hard work, the necessary work, the good work, the essential work to save lives and beat this epidemic, to rebuild our economy so it works for working people, to root out systemic racism in our justice system and society, to combat the climate crisis, to unite our country and heal the soul of our nation. And the road ahead will not be easy, but America is ready. And so are Joe and I. We have elected a president who represents the best in us, a leader the world will respect and our children will, a commander who will respect our troops and keep our country safe, and a president for all Americans. And it is now my great honor to introduce the President-elect of the United States of America, Joe Biden.
my fellow Americans, and the people who brought me the dance, Delawareans. I see my buddy Senator Tom Carper down there, and I think Senator Coons is there, and I think the governor's around. Is that Ruth Ann? And that former Governor Ruth Ann Minner. Most importantly, my sisters-in-law and my sister Valerie. Anyway. Folks, the people of this nation have spoken. They've delivered us a clear victory, a convincing victory, a victory for we the people. We've won with the most votes ever cast on a presidential ticket in the history of the nation. 74 million. What I must admit has surprised me. Tonight, we're seeing all over this nation, all cities and all parts of the country.
The Vice President-elect of the United States of America, Kamala Harris.
What I must admit has surprised me. Tonight, we're seeing all over this nation, all cities and all parts of the country, indeed across the world, an outpouring of joy, of hope, renewed faith in tomorrow, bring a better day. And I'm humbled by the trust and confidence you've placed in me. I pledge to be a president who seeks not to divide, but unify, who doesn't see red states and blue states, only sees the United States. And work with all my heart, with the confidence of the whole people, to win the confidence of all of you. And for that is what America, I believe, is about. It's about people. And that's what our administration will be all about. I sought this office to restore the soul of America, to rebuild the backbone of this nation, the middle class, and to make America respected around the world again. and to unite us here at home. It's the honor of my lifetime that so many millions of Americans have voted for that vision. And now, the work of making that vision is real. It's a task, the task of our time. Folks, as I said many times before, I'm Jill's husband. And I would not be here without her love and tireless support of Jill and my son Hunter and Ashley, my daughter, and all our grandchildren and their spouses and all our family. They're my heart. Jill's a mom, a military mom, an educator. And she has dedicated her life to education. But teaching isn't just what she does, it's who she is. For American educators, this is a great day for y'all. You're going to have one of your own in the White House. And Jill's going to make a great First Lady. I'm so proud of her. And I'll have the honor of serving with the fantastic Vice President who you just heard from, Kamala Harris, who makes history as the first woman, first black woman, the first woman from South Asian descent, the first daughter of an immigrant ever elected in this country. Don't tell me it's not possible in the United States. It's long overdue. And we're reminded tonight of those who fought so hard for so many years to make this happen. But once again, America's bent the arc of the moral universe more toward justice. Kamala, Doug, like it or not, your family. You become an honorary Biden, there's no way out. All those of you who volunteered and worked the polls in the middle of this pandemic, local elected officials, you deserve a special thanks from the entire nation. And to my campaign team and all the volunteers and all who gave so much of themselves to make this moment possible, I owe you. I owe you. I owe you everything. And to all those who supported us, I'm proud of the campaign we built and ran. I'm proud of the coalition we put together, the broadest and most diverse coalition in history. Democrats, Republicans, Independents, progressives, moderates, conservatives, young, old, urban, suburban, rural, gay, straight, transgender, white, Latino, Asian, Native American. I mean it, especially those moments, and especially those moments when this campaign was at its lowest ebb. The African American community stood up again for me. You've always had my back, and I'll have yours. I said at the outset, I wanted to represent this campaign to represent and look like America. We've done that. Now that's what I want the administration to look like and act like. For all those of you who voted for President Trump, I understand the disappointment tonight. I've lost a couple times myself. But now, let's give each other a chance. It's time to put away the harsh rhetoric, lower the temperature, see each other again, listen to each other again. And to make progress, we have to stop treating our opponents as our enemies. They are not our enemies. They are Americans. They're Americans. The Bible tells us, to everything there is a season, a time to build, a time to reap and a time to sow, and a time to heal. This is the time to heal in America. Now this campaign is over. What is the will of the people? What is our mandate? I believe it's this. Americans have called upon us to marshal the forces of decency, the forces of fairness, to marshal the forces of science, and the forces of hope in the great battles of our time. The battle to control the virus, the battle to build prosperity, the battle to secure your family's health care, the battle to achieve racial justice and root out systemic racism in this country, and the battle to save our planet by getting climate under control, the battle to restore decency, defend democracy, and give everybody in this country a fair shot. That's all they're asking for, a fair shot. Folks, our work begins with getting COVID under control. We cannot repair the economy, restore our vitality, or relish life's most precious moments, hugging our grandchildren, our children, our birthdays, weddings, graduations, all the moments that matter most to us until we get it under control. On Monday, I will name a group of leading scientists and experts as transition advisors to help take the Biden-Harris COVID plan and convert it into an action blueprint that will start on January the 20th, 2021. That plan will be built on bedrock science. It will be constructed out of compassion, empathy, and concern. I will spare no effort, none, or any commitment to turn around this pandemic. Folks, I'm a proud Democrat, but I will govern as an American president. I'll work as hard for those who didn't vote for me as those who did. Let this grim era of demonization in America begin to end here and now. The refusal of Democrats and Republicans to cooperate with one another, it's not some mysterious force beyond our control. It's a decision, a choice we make. And if we can decide not to cooperate, then we can decide to cooperate. And I believe that this is part of the mandate given to us from the American people. They want us to cooperate in their interest. And that's the choice I'll make. And I'll call on Congress, Democrats and Republicans alike, to make that choice with me. The American story is about slow yet steadily widening the opportunities in America. And make no mistake, too many dreams have been deferred for too long. We must make the promise of the country real for everybody, no matter their race, their ethnicity, their faith, their identity, or their disability. Folks, America has always been shaped by inflection points, by moments in time where we've made hard decisions about who we are and what we want to be. Lincoln in 1860, coming to save the Union. FDR in 1932, promising a beleaguered country a new deal. JFK in 1960, pledging a new frontier. And 12 years ago, when Barack Obama made history, he told us, yes, we can. Well, folks, we stand at an inflection point. We have an opportunity to defeat despair, to build a nation of prosperity and purpose. We can do it. I know we can. I've long talked about the battle for the soul of America. We must restore the soul of America. Our nation is shaped by the constant battle between our better angels and our darkest impulses. And what presidents say in this battle matters. It's time for our better angels to prevail. Tonight, the whole world is watching America. And I believe at our best, America is a beacon for the globe. We will lead not only by the example of our power, but by the power of our example. I've always believed, many of you heard me say it, I've always believed we can define America in one word: possibilities. That in America Everyone should be given an opportunity to go as far as their dreams and God-given ability will take them. You see, I believe in the possibilities of this country. We're always looking ahead to an America that's freer and more just, ahead to an America that creates jobs with dignity and respect, ahead of America that cures diseases like cancer and Alzheimer's, ahead to an America that never leaves anyone behind, ahead of America that never gives up, never gives in. This is a great nation. It's always been a bad bet to bet against America. We're a good people. This is the United States of America, and there's never been anything we've been not able to do when we've done it together. Folks, in the last days of the campaign, I began thinking about a hymn that means a lot to me and my family, particularly my deceased son, Bo. It captures the faith that sustains me and which I believe sustains America. And I hope it can provide some comfort and solace to 230,000 Americans who've lost a loved one to this terrible virus this year. My heart goes out to each and every one of you. Hopefully this hymn gives you solace as well. And it goes like this. And he will raise you up on eagle's wings, bear you on the breath of dawn, and make you to shine like the sun, and hold you in the palm of his hand. And now together, on eagle's wings, we embark on the work that God and history have called upon us to do, with full hearts and steady hands, with faith in America and in each other, with love of country, a thirst for justice. Let us be the nation that we know we can be, a nation united, a nation strengthened, a nation healed, the United States of America. And ladies and gentlemen, there's never been anything we've tried we've not been able to do. So remember, as our grandpapa used to say when I walked out of his home when I was a kid up in Scranton, he said, "Joey, keep the faith." And our grandmother, when she was alive, she yelled, "No, Joey, spread it. Spread the faith. God love you all. May God bless America, and may God protect our troops." Thank you, thank you, thank you.